and welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that kept on looking for a site in the middle of the night, but couldn't see the light until it saw the retina-searing awesomeness that is Teletext. Long way to go for that one, I know. Anyway, as you may or may not have heard by now, I have managed to acquire a KeyFax box. And no, I'm not trying to make some sort of weird pun. I mean, I actually found one of the KeyFax decoders. And of course, KeyFax being the US equivalent of the British CFax service. Now, I initially really wanted this episode to be all about my amazing, colossal resurrection of the US KeyFax service, and I thought I had all the ingredients for it, but it just didn't happen, and it kind of looks like it's not gonna happen. So as such, I've had to kind of retool things here. So now, roughly half of today's episode is going to be devoted to just looking at the KeyFax decoder and what very little I've been able to do with it, and roughly half a rundown of Teletext in North America, with a very heavy emphasis on the US, because it's a tale that really hasn't been told anyway. And otherwise, let's get down to business. Quite recently, a viewer brought this to my attention. This is a KeyFax Teletext magazine box decoder. More on that later. And he found this on good old Fleabay and sent me a link to the listing. And admittedly, my initial reaction was, well, that's nice. Never seen one before. Cool, but whatever. And I just let it go. But sometimes I'm a little too practical for my own good, as implied. And really, my logic was that, like my on-TV box and Manhattan cable box, the things that sit behind me on that little so-called set of mine, in all reality, at this point, this thing would only be good for a bit of geeky decoration. But then this just lodged itself into my brain, and I drifted back to my old Teletext Heaven or Hell episode from early 2013, and remembered that TBS ran KeyFax in their vertical blanking interval of their cable TV feed, not necessarily their local Atlanta one, and did so upon reading a little more, from roughly late 1982 until probably sometime in 1985, maybe mid-85. Well, it just so happens that in the 8 years plus since that old archive episode, I've managed to accrue a few period cable TBS tapes. Now, I've seen folks over in England and Germany recover teletext from old videotapes. And of course, the data is corrupt as all hell, but it's proof of concept at least. Although I should note that I've seen some real diehards reconstruct the data. But anyway, I figured, well, this is the only KeyFax anything I have ever seen at any price, and I've got these tapes. Maybe I can do something akin to what they've been trying out over in Europe for the last several years now. Maybe I better jump on this. And, of course, at the very least, it can be a nice bit of decor around Archive HQ. So anyway, $55 later, I had me a very dirty and veneer-peeling KeyFax box. No remote, no manual, no documentation, but hey, at least I've got the heart of it. And then from there, it just devolved into almost an entire weekend of me, well, first cleaning and reattaching the peeling wood veneer, but then just me trying every permutation of wiring and me rifling through every remote control in my possession, hoping that one of them would fart out that right frequency to put this thing into text mode, regardless of what button on what remote it corresponds to. And so with that, let's take a cut here and let's start going over what very little I've deduced. I was kind of hoping that since so much time has passed since I covered this the first time around, that there would be some more information kicking around out there on KeyFax. And it turned out to be half true. So the thing is, there were two main, if you will, flavors of KeyFax. One being the original one-way UK-styled CFAX and Oracle type of teletext, this unit being for that style. And then the other flavor was a two-way modem-driven early internet version where you could shop online, check your bank account, and so on. But pretty much all the information that has been posted online since I did this the first time has been on the two-way version. And even then, no manuals, and I still have yet to see a terminal like on Fleabay or anything. The only picture of a terminal I found was in a sales brochure. So, as I already said, this became just a game of me blindly whacking and hacking away at it, trying to get any result. But anyway, let's go over the hookups here, and it will not take long. We've got RF in and outputs and corresponding composite in and outputs, no audio to go with the composite. And the composite input on this unit is loose, but it sort of works if you hit it just right. And silly as it sounds, I've tried not only RF in and out and composite in and out, but I've also mixed and matched, and I just got desperate and I hooked all 4 ports up just for the hell of it. And the closest to a result I got, I don't think I'm going to describe too well. So let's take a cut here. I'll dig out my little CRT TV and we'll pop in one of the TBS tapes and I'll show you what very little I came up with. I've only gotten 2 woefully unhelpful things to happen. The first being that just normally when you power on the KeyFax box, it scans for a channel in ascending order with just anything on it. Well, it's not going to get anything right now because, one, I don't have an antenna hooked up to the TV, and even if I did, analog is effectively dead. But in lieu of a cable box, I've got the Betamax hooked up, and it is not on at all at the moment. But it is set for channel 4, and it will correspond with KeyFax. And I've got one of the TBS tapes in there. It is from May of 1983, so we should be right in the zone for KeyFax. But anyway, let me turn this on. And it'll start scanning away. Now, I'll wait until I get the tape going, but I can take almost any of my remotes for almost any random thing, and I can point it right at point blank on the KeyFax unit, and it will start the channel scan again, just now in descending order. Once in a while, it'll interpret it as a 1 or a 2, as in me trying to change a channel. But that's kind of about it. So let's get the beta at least on. And I'll hit play, and we should be going into a commercial here. And it locked onto channel 4. Good. So there we go. The tracking is not very good on this. The tape itself is not very good. It wasn't very well recorded in the first place. But let me just take the TV remote, and I'll just start randomly hitting buttons. So try and keep an eye on the display here. And there we go. Right on the first shot, it starts the scan again. So maybe I can... I was able to get it to interpret it as a 1 there. I think I hit the quick view button. Yeah. Okay, I just hit quick view again, which it interpreted as 1. There we go. We're back in whack now. Now, the other thing that I've been able to get to happen, and it is pretty random, I may have to take a cut, is that I've been able to make the TV display P100 in small text. And my best guess is that the teletext stuff started on so-called page 100, which is how CFAX ran. And as far as I know, it was just an NTSC copy of CFAX. But anyway, I can generally make it happen by hitting fast forward or rewind. So let's just see what I get. Yeah, right out of the gate. And if I hold it down, I can sometimes make it multiply or just give me kind of random garbage. Looks like it actually threw in a number 7 there. That's a new one. And I think I see the pound sign on there too. The British pound sign. So, yeah. Results. But anyway, if you have any suggestions on how to further test this thing, let me know in the comments or shoot me an email or whatever. And if it's sufficiently interesting or sufficiently stupid, maybe I'll give this another go. But unfortunately, this is about all I've got to report right now. So I guess without further ado, we ought to do that history lesson thing.
Playtex Cross Your Heart's new Beautiful Ones bra. Special introductory price $9.99.
I'm Don Farmer with Chris Curl. On our Take Two program Wednesday, should the federal...
This is no ordinary TV receiver. As well as being able to receive pictures, it can also receive broadcast information services. Let me show you. I'll switch to text, and you can immediately see that we now have a static page of information. This is a system being broadcast by the BBC, which is called KeyFax.
Just to briefly fill in anyone who's not familiar, teletext was an early method of quasi-interactivity in the technological sense, mostly used to display news items using a special remote control and a decoder box hooked to a regular TV. The data was broadcast through the vertical blanking interval in existing broadcasts, later home to things like closed captioning. Teletext was first officially placed into service in England via the BBC in 1974 with their CFAX service, a play on the words CFAX. A competing, albeit later compatible, teletext service called Oracle surfaced in 1978, and by the early 80s, both services came into regular use, so much so that decoders more or less became standard built-in on UK TVs for decades to come. For all intents and purposes, the opening salvo of teletext in North America happened in 1978 when the Canadian Communications Research Centre began work on one of the first videotex, read two-way teletext, services. In 1980, Teledon was rolled out in Headingley, Manitoba, a rural community just a bit west of Winnipeg, under the name Project Ida, really more as a means of testing out bandwidth capabilities than anything else. Project Ida ended in 1981. A handful of towns across Canada were set up with public Teledon terminals, mostly designed to allow people to look up the day's news headlines, and some areas had a short-lived domestic version, which also allowed people to check their bank accounts and shop online. But oddly enough, if Teledon is remembered for much of anything today, it's not for its communication abilities, but for its, for the time, advanced graphic capabilities, which was picked up by a handful of Canadian artists, mostly at Trinity Square Video in Toronto, and saved for posterity on videotape. The Canadian government pulled the plug on Teledon in 1985, though the Teledon name continued via Environment Canada on some cable TV systems for a few more years. A few days apart in March of 1980, the truly non-interactive Pages from KeyFax debuted on BBC One and 2 during off hours. No decoder was needed, it was simply broadcast by the network. Like England, here in the States, I think we can safely deduce that the Pages model was considered a Trojan horse of sorts. As far as the US is concerned, as far back as 1975, the notion of teletext was already kicking around in the heads of some American businessmen, particularly in the newspaper business. The first significant crack at teletext in the US was an explicit NTSC copy of Pages from KeyFax known as KeyFax, a play on the words key facts. KeyFax was spearheaded by Chicago-based Field Communications, who also happened to own the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Daily News, and local TV station WFLD. As such, it should come as no surprise that the first stab at the KeyFax system would draw upon the Sun-Times for material, and its non-interactive Pages would air over WFLD. And indeed it did, during the overnight hours in lieu of signing off for the night, starting on September 7th, 1981. This became known as that archive classic, Night Owl.
Night Owl takes flight at midnight every night to bring you the latest news, sports, business, weather, and leisure.
As longtime archive viewers know, I've got a real soft spot for Night Owl. It's just Pages from KeyFax, just with a less formal, less stuffy, and frankly less British vibe, and a far better soundtrack.
Somebody's knocking, should I let him in? Lord, it's the devil.
Having said that, just like KeyFax had limited data capabilities, leaving many deeper news stories boiled down to overly superficial status. Nonetheless, it made for a decent enough quick run through news, weather, stocks, and sports, and was delivered in a pleasant, unobtrusive, low-key manner. Admittedly, this is pure speculation on my part, but my guess is that while Night Owl did have the odd advertiser, it was simply not enough to keep things solvent. It also didn't help that Field Communications began the process of selling its TV holdings in the summer of 1982. Despite some erroneous reports, Night Owl indeed ended in September of that year and got replaced with a looped digest version of CNN's headline news. By the end of the year, WFLD was sold off to Metro Media and changed branding in March of 1983. For what it's worth, then independent Los Angeles TV station KTTV apparently aired their own version of Night Owl, known as Metrotext. Alas, as of this episode, no footage, or stills for that matter, are known to exist. The only evidence I found of Metrotext at all comes by way of a couple of 1984 newspaper citations and a couple of period academic texts. Any interactive version of KeyFax was pretty well doomed right out of the gate. While the technology was fairly easily adapted for the US and the NTSC standard, implementing the technology was going to be a much tougher job. Case in point, starting in November of 1982, the national cable feed of superstation WTBS, better known as just TBS, began running a one-way pseudo-interactive version of KeyFax, just like England's CFax. Problem was, no one outside of WTBS could decode it, because the British manufactured KeyFax decoders were still awaiting safety approval from Underwriters Laboratories. UL. It took until the summer of 1983 for any outboard KeyFax decoders to publicly surface, and you could only rent the box for $10 a month, plus another $10 to, access KeyFax. Zenith also started putting KeyFax decoders in some of their TVs, though you'd still have to pay the monthly access fee, but Zenith didn't really promote it. And that pretty well sets the pace for this version of KeyFax. WTBS, as far as I can tell, gave KeyFax little, if any, promotion. Depending on your source, WTBS dropped KeyFax in either late 1984 or early 1985, whereupon it was replaced with the existing Cincinnati-based, ultra-similar, longer-lasting, but no less obscure, Electra system, of which only a few stills survive. For what it's worth, Electra eventually became the last teletext service in the US and was discontinued in 1993.
KeyFax presents The Shopping Trip.
Probably inspired by the Canadian Teledon system and/or the French Minitel system, KeyFax tried its hand at what turned out to be a mini-trend of two-way videotex systems to roll through the US in the early and mid-80s. Others included AT&T Scepter, aka Viewtron, and Time Teletext. None ever made it past local testing. Anyway, once again using Chicago as a testing ground, in November of 1984, a truly interactive version of KeyFax was tried out. Like pretty much any other video text service, you could not only pull up news items, but shop, check your bank balance, play some low-level games, and communicate with other users. Upon launch, some 200 Chicagoans used either a $60 software package for their existing personal computers, or rented a Honeywell-made KeyFax terminal to access the service. Service cost $15 a month for 5 hours of access, or $30 a month for 15 hours of access. According to one article, the service may have peaked at only 300 users. Unsurprisingly, KeyFax Videotex never did go national and folded in 1986. To briefly wrap this up, at the height of Teletext's non-notoriety in the US, we're talking 1983 through 86, both NBC and CBS took cracks at their own teletext services, both using the NABTS standard, not compatible with KeyFax, but free to anyone with a decoder, most made by Panasonic. And good luck finding one. I couldn't even find a picture. Unfortunately, there's very little info and very little footage and/or stills. CBS's Extravision dated as far back as 1979, but didn't go into practice until 1981, and even then only in reduced form and only on Los Angeles affiliate KNXT, now KCBS. The first full crack at it came in 1983, but only on Charlotte, North Carolina affiliate WBTV. The service went national in 84 and was abandoned in 86. NBC's Teletext, simply named NBC Teletext, launched in 1983 with a showing at the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show and appeared on NBC affiliates the same year, and disappeared in 84. And that pretty well sums up teletext and videotex in the US. Fascinating, frustrating, but in the end, merely a fart in the wind.
There never were a pocket.
Well, if nothing else, I've put the KeyFax box out for display here at Archive HQ. Up out of the shot, where only I will ever see it, because the damn thing is almost twice as wide as the on TV box, and it would never fit back there. I mean, I could take some of the CDs out, but it would still kind of poke out, and it would make a really funky looking pyramid, and I'd always be partially blocking the thing. Me and boxes. Oh well. That's it for today's archive. Join me next time when I acquire a Cube Interactive TV controller and proceed to get all upset that I couldn't do anything with that sucker either.